All right, here we go. Lisa Van Allen, welcome to VladTV.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. With the whole, surviving R. Kelly documentary, everyone has an opinion about what's happening. But I think we're lucky enough to actually have someone here who was in a relationship with R. Kelly for a number of years. So we're actually going to get a firsthand account of the whole story. So I definitely appreciate you coming through.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's go ahead and start from the beginning. So I guess you grew up in Hartford, Connecticut.
Well, I was born in Hartford, Connecticut. I didn't grow up there.
Okay,
Yeah.
where'd you end up growing up?
In Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, and you were a foster child.
Yes.
Okay, and what was the whole story about you becoming a foster child?
My mother was actually a teenager, and she and my father separated. She didn't have any money. I ended up in foster care, and something happened to where she ended up in jail, and they ended up the state got involved, and me and my younger brother, he was actually like a newborn, and I was 1 years old. And they put us in foster care.
Wow. There were no grandparents or anything else like that around to help you guys out during that time?
I do have a grandmother, but she was actually working and she had other grandchildren, so it really wasn't a good situation for her at that time to take on her grandchildren. So, and that's how I met my foster mother, because she worked with my grandmother, and my grandmother introduced her to me.
Okay. Now I've interviewed people on the show that were foster children, and I think what a lot of people don't realize, and I don't know if this is your case, but you know they had I would say, how many foster homes were you in? And I'd get these astronomical numbers like 34, 28, like these huge number of homes. Was that happening to you, or were you just in one home?
No, it was actually just the one home. I was there from 1 until I was 6 years old. That's when I got adopted. But, I would have rather had gone to another one because I was, sexually abused at the foster home, so
Okay. So in the foster home, was there two parents or just one?
there were 2 in the beginning, and then the foster lady, her husband died, so then it was only her.
Okay. So who was actually sexually abusing you?
It was a teenage boy that would come over to visit, one of the older teenage boys, and his brother. It was 2 of them, actually.
Oh, wow. So you were, I mean, because you went into a foster home at 5 years old.
I went at 1,
At one, okay, I'm sorry.
and I
At one
stayed
years
till I was
old
6.
until six. So what ages was this happening?
I was about 4 because I can remember it, so I know I couldn't have been too much younger than that. I was about 4 years old, and anytime they would come over, yeah.
Okay,
But
that's hard.
it wasn't intercourse, but it was making me perform sexual acts. I like put use Vaseline and you know with them. So
Okay. Did the foster? Well, I guess at one point it was two parents. Did they know about this at all?
no, I was told not to tell anyone, or they would hurt. The foster lady and things like the normal stuff you tell people. They would say to scare me.
Did you tell anybody?
Not at the time. It took me years. Actually, Rob was the first person I told.
Wow. So you were going through very traumatic experiences
Yes,
early on.
yes,
Um, okay. And then at one point you get adopted.
yes. Hmm.
During the foster time, were you in contact with your real parents at all?
My father, no. My uh, birth mother, after I was adopted, yes. When I was in adoption, when I was in the foster home, no, I hadn't talked to her.
Okay. So you get adopted by a single woman?
Yes,
Okay. And how was that?
it was awesome. That was probably one of the best days of my life. I can think back to her adopting me and then me knowing I didn't have to go back to that place. And she was really, really nice. And because she wanted children of her own, but she couldn't have kids. So she was, just a great woman and very nurturing and all those things. But, things still happen. She couldn't fill the voids of my father not being there, being abused, things like that.
Okay. So now you're in a better space with this woman.
Yes.
Um, but you ended up moving out at 16.
Yes.
Okay. And why was that? You're in a good home, you're safe. You don't have your, biological parents, but you have someone that's actually taking care of you. Why leave at that early age?
It really was just me being a teenager and her and I going through our own little battles and things like that, with me thinking I was older than I was. If you know anything about teenagers, they think they're grown, So at that time, me and her were struggling, going back and forth. Her mother had just gotten sick and she was dealing with her mother's illness. And, we had like a really big argument. And I told her, I want to go live with my aunt. And that's how I ended up going to Minneapolis at 16.
Okay. So you moved to Minneapolis and you're living with your aunt. So you're not really on your own like that. You're just with a relative.
I was with a relative, but I was very much on my own because she provided shelter. But if she was not home, you couldn't get in the house. And she wasn't buying me any clothing, no feminine products, none of that stuff. So anything you needed, you'd have to get for yourself. If you couldn't get in the house, and back in 96, there weren't cell phones. So if I didn't get in and I'm in Minneapolis and it's 20 degrees outside, I'd catch a bus to someone's house or find somewhere to go, so
Okay. So you're almost like semi-homeless in a way.
exactly. Yes.
Okay. So now you're back in a bad situation again.
Right.
Why not move back home to Atlanta where, you have a loving mother?
I didn't want to tell her that I was wrong. You know what I mean? I was battling with that, as well as, I really couldn't get in the house half the time anyway to call her. So, I mean, it was just a rough situation.
So a year later, at 17, one of your girlfriends invites you to a video shoot.
Yes, it was actually her boyfriend was actually my friend, and he asked me to go with her because she was an aspiring singer, and he didn't want her to go by herself. So yes, I went with her as an extra.
Right. For the Home Alone R. Kelly video shoot.
Yes,
Okay. Were you an R. Kelly fan at that point?
yes, I was.
Okay. Like a super fan or just a casual fan?
No, not a super fan, just a casual fan.
Casual fan. I think we were all
I
casual
was more
fans.
into Tupac at that time.
Okay.
Tupac had just died, so I was dealing with that.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Tupac died in 96. So
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So you're on this video set for Home Alone, and that's when you and R. Kelly kind of start interacting.
Yeah.
So explain that whole situation.
I'm at the video shoot, and we're doing our scenes, and one of his cousins came up to me. At the time I didn't know it was his cousin. He came up to me and said, "Rob wants to meet you." I didn't know who Rob was, so I asked him, "Well, who's Rob?" And he was like, "R. Kelly." Um, I'm like, "Oh, okay." I didn't think anything of it at the time because I know I'm 17 years old, so I'm just thinking, okay, well, maybe he just wants to say hey, or I didn't know what it was. So I get on the golf cart with him. We go over to where he's at, and he immediately starts asking me questions. He starts asking me things like, "How old are you?" I told him 17. He immediately after that asked me, "Will your mother let you come to Chicago?" I told him she would. Of course, I didn't ask my mother. Um, he asked me, did I have a boyfriend? I said no. He asked me about my family structure. Was my father home at home? No, it's just my mom. Just questions I feel like now that were questions to where he could see if I could fit into his lifestyle, where he wouldn't get any, like backlash from anyone trying to see where I was or find out what I was doing. But at that time, I just thought he was interested in me. That's why I thought he asked those questions.
Okay. And, I did the math. In 1997, when you were 17, he was 30.
Right. He was he was 30.
Yeah. Born in 67.
Mhm.
So that'd make it 30. And so this was originally in Minneapolis?
The video shoot was in
Yeah.
Alpharetta, Georgia.
Oh, it was in Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're back in Georgia again.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was after I came back.
Oh, so you came back. Okay. Got it. You came back, you go to this video shoot. And so you and R. Kelly interact. What happens next after that video shoot?
After the video shoot, he had given me his phone number at the shoot. I waited about a month to call him, and the reason for that was I was not really sure what to talk to him about. I don't know. I just didn't know what to talk to him about. So when I finally called him, I didn't really have to talk to him much at all. When I called him and I explained who I was, Lisa Van Allen from the video shoot, he said, "When can you get to Chicago?" I told him whenever he wanted me to come. So the next step was for him to put me in contact with June Brown, which was his assistant, and it still is was as recently as last year his assistant. So he put me in contact with June. They sent me money to come up there. They didn't book my travel at that point, and they sent me the money, told me what to do to get an ID, state ID, where what airport to go to, where to get the tickets, and all that. They coached me through everything to get to Chicago. Okay.
Okay. And at this point, you're still 17?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And are you going to school at all or no?
I was actually working at South Lake Mall.
Okay, so you dropped out of high school?
No, I wasn't in school at that time.
Oh, okay. Got it.
I had just came from Minneapolis. I wasn't in school at the moment.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, because you're moving around. Got it. And before this point, did you have boyfriends? Were you still a virgin, or were you,
I've had a boyfriend before. At that time, I didn't have one, and I wasn't a virgin. I mean, no, I wasn't a virgin at the time.
Okay. So R. Kelly's people send you this money. You go and book the ticket and go to Chicago.
Yes.
And what happens during that first trip?
Pretty basic stuff. I checked into he had a car pick me up, a limo, and I go to my hotel room, drop my stuff off. He has June come get me. I go to the studio. We just sit and listen to music. Most of the time we were listening to music. In between that, he would go play basketball. We'd eat. We had sex, so pretty basic.
Okay. So the first time you had sex on that first trip?
Yes.
Okay. And you were 17, he was 30. Is 17 considered legal in Illinois or no?
I believe so.
Okay. So he's technically functioning within the law at this point.
Right. I just don't know what man in his 30s wants a 17-year-old, but yeah.
No, I feel you.
All right.
Okay. So you're hanging out on this first trip, and you're around the superstar who has a string of hits and has millions of dollars and so forth. Like, how does it feel to be a 17-year-old in this type of environment?
It was kind of fun at first because, like you said, he's talented, and sitting there listening to his music and him write music. It was that was a great experience. He pretty much was doing what we were doing, meaning when I say we, teenagers at that time would have been doing, going to recreational centers, playing basketball, the mall, rock and roll McDonald's, all the things that kids that age would have been doing, he was doing. So I was enjoying myself up until that point.
Okay. So how does the relationship progress from that first trip?
He ended up having me stay because I went home, came back another time, and he kept making me miss my flight. And I told him, if I keep missing my flight, I'm going to get fired. And he asked me, well, how much do you make? And I told him $300. So he pulled $300 out and gave it to me. And we never discussed me going home again. I just ended up staying up there. That was just pretty much it.
Okay. So you end up just basically moving to Chicago.
Yep, definitely.
And were you staying in hotels, apartments, his place? What?
It would be, his studio is set up like apartment rooms. He has beds, TVs. Some rooms have showers, refrigerators, things like that. So yeah, we'd be at the studio. He'd be at the studio most of the time. Or you'd be at a really nice hotel or on the tour bus with him. So wherever I'd be, he'd be there, so. That was
Okay, so
pretty
you
much it.
were, I guess, living in the studio at certain points?
Yeah, he was too.
Okay.
I mean,
So when
he had a home, of course, but he wouldn't be he'd be in the studio 24/7.
okay. And would you go to his home as well?
I have been to his home.
Okay. And as you're doing this, well, I guess he was married at the time.
Yes, but in the beginning, I didn't know that in the beginning.
Okay. Did you find out at some point early on that he's married?
Wasn't too early on. It was probably, I'm really not sure exactly how long, but I know it was a good while later. And when I found out it wasn't through him, it was a runner actually said your wife's on whatever line she was on. So that's how I found out.
Okay. And were there other girls around during this time?
There would be. Sometimes we do threesomes and, there would be other girls involved.
In the early stages, were you just completely satisfied with the relationship that you guys had, or were you kind of uneasy about the whole thing?
I was okay until the threesomes became frequent. When he told me the first threesome we had, he told me he had never had one before. So that's how he initiated it. And I agreed to it because I felt like he was who he is, a star. And if he never had a threesome, I felt like that I could do that for him. But after we did the threesome, he wanted more threesomes and more threesomes. And that's when it was like, okay, this is getting out of hand.
Okay. And you were not bisexual really at all?
No.
Okay. You were just doing it to please
I
him.
mean, I can appreciate a beautiful woman, but no, I don't crave for women,
Yeah. Well, a lot of times women will have threesomes for the
Right.
man, to please the man. That's a very, very common thing. Um, okay. And the first threesome you had, was it with an underage girl?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. So it was an older woman.
Not older. She was more
But
my age, probably
your
about
age.
17, 18. So she wasn't underage.
Okay. At what point was the threesome with the underage girl actually happening?
Um, I don't know exactly the point, but I know it actually happened at his home. And uh, it happened at his home, and I was 17 years old. So it wasn't in the very beginning, but it wasn't too long after the first threesome.
Okay. Now, how'd you know the girl was underage?
He told me she was his 16-year-old neighbor, but I found out 2 years later that she was actually 14 at the time.
Wow. Okay. And he was actually filming these threesomes.
Yes. Pretty much every threesome he filmed.
Okay. Because I remember I saw an interview with the reporter that, was basically following him the whole time,
Yeah.
the one that he mentioned in the song. And he was talking about, I guess, the wood room is how you guys described it.
Colorado room.
Colorado room. And what he was saying was that there's actually cameras built into the walls. Like this was a permanent part of the house. And I guess when he ended up selling the house, the cameras were still there.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
see, I didn't know that. I know he had like a tripod and the camera set up and the bright lights, so he would do that.
Okay. And were you okay with him filming this?
I mean, it was uncomfortable, but I didn't say don't do it or anything, and it wasn't hidden.
Okay. And when he told you this girl is 16, was that bothering you at all?
Not because I was 17. So I felt like he said something. He told me something that he knew would be okay because I actually had a homegirl from Chicago that was 16 years old. So, and he knew about her. She would come to the studio. So,
Okay. And I guess he kept this bag of videotapes like everywhere he went.
yes, he did. He took it everywhere, to the gym, back to the studio, on the tour bus. Yeah.
How many tapes was it, if you were to just guess?
I don't know. It was a lot, though. I mean, think about a Nike big old duffel bag that guys usually take to work out or to the gym. One of those stuffed with VHS tapes.
Stuffed with
Yes.
VHS. Well, you're not even talking
They're
about
tall.
VHS.
They're
You're talking
long.
about mini DVDs.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No, they
we're
were
talking
VHS.
about oh, the full VHS.
Yeah.
Oh, so he was transferring them to
But it
actual.
stuffed the bag.
Oh,
with
so he
him.
could. Oh, so he could watch him on his TV.
Right. He was putting them in the
before,
VCR, and he'd take them out of that big camcorder and put them in the VCR.
So he's confiding in you at this point, and he's telling you about his own sexual abuse.
Yes.
Okay, so what kind of stuff did he tell you?
First thing he confided in me about was about his own sexual abuse. He told me that his sister molested him when they were children. She would make him put a pencil in her vagina, do oral on him. He would do oral on her, things like that. So that made me really comfortable with talking to him about what happened to me. And, that was like the first initial thing that made us kind of bond. You know what I mean? So yeah, we dealt with that. He told me about him and Aaliyah, their situation. They had a pact, pins and eyeballs, no matter what anyone said, or if anyone stuck pins in their eyeballs, they would never tell about their relationship. Um, things like that.
Okay, so what exactly did he tell you about his relationship with Aaliyah outside of the pins and eyeballs thing?
He told me that they were married, that she was pregnant, that they did doctor up the uh, marriage certificate, so she would say that she was 18, so they could get married. And the reason they got married was because they felt like if he was married to her, and if he said he thought that she was 18, that he wouldn't be charged if someone found out she was pregnant until they were able to get the abortion and get it annulled.
Okay, because I'd always heard that rumor that R. Kelly married Aaliyah because he had gotten her pregnant.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
And
And this came out of his mouth. I could take a lie detector test to this. This is what he told me. Specifically told me.
okay, I mean, you cleared out like literally a decades old rumor.
Right.
Like
No,
I've
it's
never
not a
heard
rumor.
anyone actually.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So R. Kelly was having sex with her from like what age? 14, 15?
Honestly, I'm not really sure the age, but I definitely know when they got married, she was 15. So if she was pregnant, I mean, I'm imagining at least 14, So,
Okay. So R. Kelly gets Aaliyah pregnant. They try to get married with a fake age. It ultimately gets annulled. Aaliyah never talks about it.
yeah, they stuck to their pact.
Yeah. And I remember seeing an interview with Dame Dash, who had dated her, years later, right before she passed.
Yes.
And he even said that he had asked her about it once, and she said, "I don't want to talk about it." And
Yeah.
that was the end of that. So, I mean, she stuck to that. Did you ask him at all why he was having, because he was probably what, 24, 25 at the time? Like why he
Yeah.
was having sex with a 14-year-old?
Yeah, he was older. I never asked him why. I guess because we were kind of like in a conversation of just confiding in each other. But he did get a little more in depth with more details about when her mother found out, and that he actually stayed at their home in Detroit, and her mother actually was sexually attracted to him as well. And he said when Aaliyah would go to sleep, that he would, this is what he said. He said that he would go in the living room and him and her would do sexual acts on the couch while Aaliyah was sleeping in the bedroom.
R. Kelly was having sex with Aaliyah and her mother at the same time? I
That's
mean,
what
not the exact same time, but the
That's what he
same
said.
time frame?
That's what he says. Yeah.
Oh, so maybe this is why Aaliyah's parents have never spoken out themselves.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Wow, this is something I've never heard before.
Right. Came from his mouth.
Okay. And I mean, you're 17 at the time, so I guess it didn't really
Yeah. I just was
bother
like,
you.
other than like, wow. Really what was like, wow for me was the mother, when he said that. And then, at this right now, we don't know what's true about what he says, but that's just what he said. So,
So you're back in a relationship with R. Kelly, and I mean, he's essentially supporting you and your daughter now.
Yes.
Okay. At what point did you start going through his tapes and start finding some of the various tapes?
That was back in either 99 or 2000.
So that was before you actually moved
Yes.
and came back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because at one point you actually started taking some of the tapes.
I just took one.
You took one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The
And
one
I was
that you were in.
right. Mm-hmm. I
The
mean, I
one
was
that you
in
were actually
multiple,
in.
but I found that I just ran across one that I was in.
Okay. And why did you take that one particular tape when there's a whole bunch of tapes with you?
It's just the only one I was able to run into at that moment. If I would have seen more with me on them, I would have took those two.
Okay. And the tape that ultimately, came out in court later. Uh, was that one of the tapes that you saw during that time?
No, the one that came out in court is not. The people on the tape, I recognize them, but no, that wasn't one of the tapes that I looked at.
Okay. I mean, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but, in that particular tape, there's like urination and
Right.
stuff like that. Were you doing any of that stuff with him yourself or no?
No, he actually did ask me about urinating on me, on my butt. And I told him, I didn't tell him anything. Actually, I just kind of laughed it off and was like, kind of like that. So he has a way of kind of fishing for what he can and can't do and to you and things like that. So when he saw that I didn't just right away agree with it, then he knew that that wasn't nothing I was interested in doing. So it never came up again.
Okay. But you went ahead and stole this tape and then you gave it to one of his artists.
Yes.
Can you say who that was?
Yeah, his name was Keith. It was when he was in his group Talent. It was actually he was they became friends of mine because they were staying in one of the same hotels that I had a room in, and Rob would give them only $25 to eat with. This is what they told me, and they would see me ordering all this room service and stuff. Like if they walk by the hallway and see my trays, out in the hall and stuff, and um, they were, I said, well, I can order y'all food. So that's how we got cool. So I would just order them food all the time. And, that's how we became cool.
Okay. So now you have this tape. You gave it to one of his artists to hold. And this is before the charges and everything?
Yes. Well, he had yeah, actually it was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Okay. And at one point, he finds out that you took that tape.
Yeah, he did. He found
Okay.
out.
And how did that go?
That was in 2007. Yeah, he found out about it. And he actually asked me to come to Chicago. And I came to Chicago. We talked about it. He asked me, did I think I could get possession of it? And I told him I did. And I actually spoke with Keith and got him to come to Chicago with the tape.
Okay. So I guess Kelly's lawyers said that you tried to get $300,000 for that tape.
Yeah, no, we didn't try to get anything for anything.
Okay, so
He
there was
actually, no, he did give them money for the tape, but he gave them, it was his idea. He said, I will give you 250,000 for the tape. So it wasn't, they didn't say, oh, if you give me, I have this and if you want it, you get, no, they didn't even want to deal with him. They didn't want to talk to him. They didn't want to give him the tape, nothing. So no, it wasn't anything like that.
Okay, but you just offered him $250,000. So
Yeah, he did. He offered them, but they'd be, I mean, wouldn't you take it if somebody offered you some money?
yeah, no,
that's not
I'm
blackmail if you offered it,
okay. And
So
were you involved in that financial transaction? Did you get part of that money?
I was involved in it, yes, because I was the one who had to convince them to come. I was the one who had to go get the lie detector test done, things like that. So yes, I was.
Okay. And can you say how much you got out of that?
Um, it ended up being because it was several trips. I had to take 100,000.
Okay, so you got 100 and Keith got 150.
He ended up with 100 as well.
Okay.
50 never came for no one
Okay. So each of you got 100,000
in the end. Yeah.
in the end. Now, at this point, are you and R. Kelly kind of enemies from that whole, transaction?
Oh, we weren't until Daryl McDavid threatened my life and said that
Okay.
we should have murked you from the beginning.
And who was that?
Daryl McDavid, he was his accountant / manager at the time.
Okay, so he threatened to kill you over that.
Yeah.
Did anything actually happen?
What do you mean?
I mean, were you roughed up? Did people show up at your house? Or was it just kind of just a vocal threat?
Yeah, it was just a vocal threat. It was a vocal, but that's all I need. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to call his bluff.
Okay. So you guys get him that tape back. Did Keith make copies of it before giving it back?
They did. That's why we ended up having to come back multiple times because when we took the lie detector test the first time, he failed. The
Oh,
question was, were there more copies? And I guess he said no, and there were. So that was a whole nother trip to come back. Yeah.
wow. Oh, okay. A lie detector test for a transaction. I guess when you're talking about this type of thing, then yeah, you got to cover your bases.
Right.
Okay. So that tape gets back to R. Kelly and the copies get destroyed. Does that tape ever surface or come out afterwards or no?
Um, I'm really not sure at this point. I mean, there's some things floating around. We're really not sure what it is at the moment right now. So I really can't say, honestly.
Okay.
We're still trying to get to the bottom of some stuff.
The other sex tape comes out. And I remember there was initially some news about it, and I think Wendy Williams was on the radio saying that she'd seen it and she was describing it and so forth. And then I remember I was living in Oakland at the time, and I go to the swap meet, and there it is, like literally, 30 copies laid out on someone's blanket, being sold
Right.
like a Friday bootleg, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember, I seen some footage from that just to see if it was R. Kelly, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's definitely R. Kelly.
Right.
And it was in that Colorado room that we had talked about earlier.
Hmm.
Um, and it was with a girl that looked very, very young.
Yeah.
And Sparkle claimed that was her niece. Have you ever seen that girl before?
Yes. That's the girl he said that was 16. That was his neighbor.
So
That's,
this is a girl you did a threesome with.
yes, that he lied and said was his neighbor originally. That's what he told me.
And this story gets very, very kind of fuzzy in terms of that, because that's Sparkle's niece, but Sparkle's brother, I guess, played bass on R. Kelly's albums.
Yes, he's the lead guitarist for a lot of his albums. Like you can Google it and just Google Greg Lamphere. That's his name. And it'll kind of show you what songs he's lead guitarist for.
Okay, and was that his daughter or
Yeah.
another?
No,
That was
that's his
his
daughter.
daughter.
And after the trial, he still did stuff with him.
Okay,
Yeah. Mhm.
so okay,
Mhm.
I'm just trying to get my head
Right.
around this. So here you are, you're a father,
Right.
and you're working for this guy, and he's paying you to do this, this thing you're passionate about, music.
Mhm.
He ends up having sex with your daughter, and then you continue to work with him afterwards.
Right. And he lied under oath because he said it wasn't her. But while he was saying it wasn't her, he was crying. That's what prosecution told me.
Wow.
You're watching the tape of your daughter getting peed on and you're crying and you're saying it's not her, but you're crying.
Right. And in that tape, that's where the peeing,
The one that went
thing
to trial,
happens.
yes.
Okay. Now, the Sparkle story is kind of interesting as well, because I had interviewed two of the members of Public Announcement, and I don't know if you saw that the
Yeah.
interview or not. But what a lot of people didn't realize was the third member of Public Announcement was this guy named Earl. Were you around Earl at all or no?
No, I did see the other guy though. What's his name? Dre, I think.
Dre
Something.
and Ricky.
Yeah, Dre. He
Yeah.
would be around Rob a lot.
Okay. Well, Earl told one of the other Public Announcement guys that he had seen R. Kelly have sex with Aaliyah, and he left the group because of that. Now, from what I understand, Earl Robinson did see some stuff between R. Kelly and Aaliyah.
Yeah, he say he did.
Okay.
That's what he said. He told me that.
So what did Earl tell you exactly?
He said he saw Rob and Aaliyah on the back of the bus.
Having sex?
Yeah.
Did Earl leave the group because of that Aaliyah situation?
Yes. That's exactly why he left. probably wasn't even a day or two after he told me that he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
But then Earl was married to Sparkle
Right.
and brought Sparkle to R. Kelly to produce her album.
Because me and Earl worked on her demo. Got it. It was hot. And Earl says to me, he says, hey, take this to Kales. I'm like, not a good idea. I said, it's not a good idea. And he was like, yes, it is. You know, I'm married to her. It's good. So I said, okay. So I took the demo down there. He listened to it. He said, oh, man, it's hot. Yeah. But I'm going to have to do this myself. He said, and I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm going to have to produce this all myself and write it. He said, y'all did some good work, but I'm going to do this on my own. So he said, you know, I'll do this, but, you know, it's going to have to be no Earl, no nothing. She's going to have to come down here. If she want her album done, she's going to have to sleep on this studio couch for 30 days, and that's the only way I'm doing it.
And she never came back.
Right.
And the question is, after seeing R. Kelly have sex with a teenager, why would you bring your wife to work with R. Kelly by herself and leave her there?
Yeah. I that baffles me as well. I don't know. I couldn't answer that one for him. I wouldn't want my wife anywhere around him. Honestly.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was a bad call. But I mean, I guess at least he got to see, you know, what kind of wife I guess he has, I guess. Because shouldn't nobody honestly be able to take your woman, you know, so.
Well, were you around Sparkle as well? Were you around Sparkle as well?
No.
Okay. Okay. So that whole family, there's some real crazy shit
Yeah.
really kind of going on, you know, with money and fame involved. It seems like
Yeah.
everything else kind of goes out the window.
Right. Yeah.
So then this tape comes out and, you know, you recognize the girl as you know, the girl that you had the threesome with, who is, you know, Sparkle says that's her niece. A bunch of her schoolmates are saying, yes, that's who we say it is. We played basketball with her, everything else like that. And R. Kelly gets arrested for, I guess, child pornography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, well, the trial doesn't start for like, what, 7 years or something? Like some huge amount of time?
Yeah, I think it was 6. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he pushed that trial back like
He did.
no one I've ever seen.
Right.
And during the time, he became bigger and bigger. I feel like his biggest songs were dropped during that 6-year era. Like The Chocolate Factory and, you know, I Believe I Could Fly came out during the time. And
I think that was in the 90s, like the late 90s, but yeah, still, you
but
know.
anyways, Step in the Name of Love and all that was coming out during that era.
Yes.
Now, the trial begins and you actually are involved in the trial.
Right.
Okay, so what did they, you know, what is your involvement in that trial?
Pretty much I just had to identify the people on the tape. I was able to identify them because I've had a threesome with the both of them. So that was pretty much my role.
When you say the both of them, there were 2 girls in the tape?
No, Rob and Rashona. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Sorry. Well, because I had heard that when the Chicago newspaper got the tape, there were like multiple tapes, multiple girls and so forth. There was a series, there was more than one tape.
Well,
and,
are we talking about the trial from 2008?
Yeah, see, that's the part I'm not sure because they almost made it describe like there were multiple tapes, but I guess only one particular scene made it to trial.
I know the other tapes were in Florida. Remember, they ended up throwing it out because I guess the way they got the tapes.
Okay.
So yeah.
Got it. Right. Okay. Got it. Okay. That's what I'm confusing it with. Yeah, because there were other tapes. So this whole trial happens, and you took the stand and everything.
Yes, I testified for 3 hours.
Okay. At some point, did you say, okay, you know, yes, I don't agree with the things that R. Kelly has done, but he's also done a lot of good things for me along the way, and I'm not going to participate in this trial. Was that ever a thought?
No, because they threatened my life. So that is what I was thinking about at that point.
Okay.
If you're talking about killing me, um, everything else is off the table. I mean, I was concerned with him getting better. I was concerned with him getting help. I was a great friend to him and lover at the time when we were in a sexual relationship. But at the time, once you come to a point where your team is talking about killing me, I think it's safe to say I shouldn't be trying to help you change and get better. I think at that point, I should be more concerned with my well being and the other young ladies that you've been dealing with.
Okay. Well, you took the stand, and a lot of people took the stand in the
Yes.
process. Did the girls, the girl on the tape, did she or her family take the stand at all?
They didn't during trial. Beforehand, they had like that hearing beforehand where that's when I said, the father said it wasn't her. She said it wasn't her. They did that, but no, not during trial.
Okay. So her whole family denied it.
Just the immediate, because Sparkle said it was her. So,
Right. So the actual girl denied it was her.
right.
Her mother and her father both denied it.
Yes. And
But
let me put out there that her mother and father were actually on a vacation while trial was going on.
oh, to avoid them taking a stand
Right.
and getting subpoenaed.
Yes. In a
Okay.
whole nother country. Right.
I mean, did you hear of any payouts or anything else like that going to the family?
I've heard. The pretty
Okay,
much
but
the typical payout that he does.
which is what,
$250.
$250,000?
Yep.
Okay. Well, they go through this whole trial, and he's found not guilty,
Yes.
which everyone was completely shocked.
Actually, I wasn't.
Really?
I wasn't.
Why is
And
that?
because if you don't have a victim, how can you have a crime?
Okay. So when he got off, you were like, that's what I thought.
I mean, I just was like, hey, I tried to help. I did my part. I'm trying. I've always been out trying to raise awareness. That's what it's about for me. Like I said, when she said it wasn't her, when I knew her family went out of town, I pretty much knew what it was going to be at that point.
Okay. And then R. Kelly goes on with his life and goes on with his career. And, he's not at that same level anymore.
Right.
But he still has a catalog of hits and still touring and everything else like that. Did you maintain any sort of contact with him after the trial?
No, none at all.
Okay. So that was it, and during this time, based on what we saw in the documentary, he's now bringing in other girls and kind of repeating the cycle all over again. And what I find kind of interesting, because I was talking to someone about this, is that you yourself, were you ever an aspiring singer?
No.
No. But a lot of the girls that ended up being around him were.
Yes.
And the only singer that I've ever heard R. Kelly put out was Sparkle.
And Aaliyah, I guess, right?
And Aaliyah, right.
Right.
But this is the 90s, like.
Right.
So you're talking about, you have these like promises of making you a superstar, but this hasn't happened in like 20 years.
Yeah, and I mean, the group talent he had, they were really good. I just hate that he really didn't do anything with them because they were awesome. Yeah, so
Okay.
he doesn't really, I guess he kind of feeds people dreams.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
So years go by, and people in the industry like myself had always, even before the trial, we had heard all the rumors and everything else like that, and then we heard more rumors afterwards. But things were relatively smooth for R. Kelly until the docuseries came out,
Right.
which you were actually in yourself.
Yes.
Were you at the initial screening when the gun threat came in?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Was that actually scary for you, or was it kind of like, okay, this is just some R. Kelly bullshit once again?
Um, we were kind of surprised at the length we felt like someone associated with him went to. But I can't say I was really scared, honestly.
Okay, and he tried to stop the docuseries from coming out,
Yeah, that's pretty much all it was.
right? But it didn't stop it at all,
Oh no.
and it comes out,
Right.
and it's like the biggest thing of 2019.
Right. Yeah, Lifetime was ready for him. They weren't going to stop.
So this thing comes out, and it's huge, and he's obviously denying everything and so forth. Um, and everyone's seeing what's going to happen, and suddenly all these new charges came up. I think it was 10 new charges.
Yes.
Okay, and then before then, I mean, Sony ended up dropping him, and I'm sure a lot of shows got canceled and so forth. But that's all small change compared to 10 new sexual assault charges.
Right.
When you heard about these 10 new charges, what'd you think?
Once again, I wasn't surprised because I mean, I know, his background. I know, that he likes young girls. I know that he likes to tape everything and record, and I mean, I know these things. So I mean, at some point, something's going to get out or misplaced, or someone's going to talk.
Okay, and along with these charges, there's 2 or 3 new tapes that have surfaced.
Yeah.
When these charges came down, were you asked to cooperate at all?
I really can't talk on that right now.
Okay,
No.
because it's still an open case.
Right. Mhm.
Got it. I'll take that as a strong maybe. Well, R. Kelly gets arrested. When you saw the footage of him going to the courtroom and the mugshots and everything else like that, how did you personally feel?
Well, I just felt like he needs to get all his affairs in order for a long stay.
Well, I guess that his financial situation was so bad that he couldn't even make bail himself.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what I heard. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine how many payouts has he done over the years? Goodness.
yeah,
Have you seen Cook County's records of all the payouts?
yeah,
Extensive.
it's quite a bit, and
Right. And those
although
are just
he
the ones
is
we know of in the court with the courts. So,
right,
right.
yeah, and it's to the point where he couldn't come up with $100,000 himself, and I guess a suburban woman in Chicago actually put the money up.
Yeah. Something else, right? It ends
Something
up being a
else.
woman helping him out.
Well, there was actually a GoFundMe page. Like females, like his female fans were starting a GoFundMe page to try to
Right.
bail him out, but I guess it got shut down.
That's
As well.
crazy. GoFundMe said, no, ma'am.
It's pretty crazy. So now he's actually out on bail and awaiting his trial.
Yes.
And your prediction when he actually goes back to trial is what?
Like I said, he better get ready, get his affairs in order for a long stay. I definitely feel like they have a strong case this time. I just, him saying it's not him, I don't see that being enough by far.
Well, you yourself are putting out a book.
Yes.
Is the book out yet or no?
Yeah, you can actually go ahead and pre-order it. It's on IamLisaVanAllen.com. That's my website. But yeah, it's
Okay.
called Surviving the Pied Piper.
Okay, why that name?
It's multiple reasons. One, for obvious reasons, he calls himself the Pied Piper. He likes underage girls. A lot of people don't put that together. The thing of him calling himself the Pied Piper and it actually meaning, the Pied Piper took children away from their families. So, I thought that was pretty fitting to what went on, with the underage girls or the young girls.
Well, when you met him, you were 17.
Yes.
And even though that was technically legal
I was
in
still a
that
child.
state, you were still a child.
Yes.
But you continued a relationship with him as you got older.
Yes.
You're 18, 19, 20. Like, what was the oldest age you were while still dealing with him?
Actually, that 2007, like right before the trial, right before I dealt with him about the tape, we
So
had
you were how old at the time?
26, 27, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
An adult,
Right.
with your own child at that point. You're a mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look back on it, how much responsibility do you put on yourself and say, you know, yes, he did, you know, here are some things that he did wrong, but here are some of the things that I willingly participated with and I have to take responsibility for myself.
I mean, I take responsibility in all the things I participated in other than the incident where he did not disclose her actual age. And he didn't allow me to make my own decision on whether I wanted to have sex with a 14-year-old. That was not what I consider as my fault. Because if I didn't know, how do I know that she's 14 if he tells me she's 16? And she didn't say anything other than that. So, you know, that would probably be the only sexual situation that I would blame him for.
Right. Because, you know, in terms of the pedophilia stuff,
Right.
I'm 100% against that, and everything he's convicted for in terms of that, I feel
Right.
that he should be put in jail for the maximum amount of time. You know, in terms of women who got involved with him, especially, you know, you were rather young, but there was women in the documentary who were in their 20s and 30s and stuff like that. Do you feel sorry for those women, or do you feel like, well, they're adults, they already heard about R. Kelly's reputation
Right.
already, so it's really on them?
Personally, I feel sorry for anyone that was abused. So if he did abuse them, then I do feel sorry for them in that way, because I mean, you can be manipulated. I mean, he's really good at manipulating you and making you do what he wants you to do and talking you into situations. So, you know, I can honestly say I do feel sorry for even a grown woman if she was abused.
I interviewed a public announcement,
Mhm.
and your name came up during the interview. So I just want to play you just a short clip. Now, Dre, you said that you've seen Lisa Van Allen around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you said that she was doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, I think this was when she was grown, because around the Home Alone time, if you research this, I wasn't in that video. So this is the time she say she met him. So I think maybe, I don't know how long it was after that, but then, yeah, then I came back around and then I seen her around. And, you know, she was doing her, you know, she's doing her thing.
Meaning?
I mean, to the point where, I mean, dude is,
It's too late.
dude is very, like, you know, he wanted his way. So I just tell you one thing. We sitting in the studio, you know, and they got the console thing in the middle, the couches on the back, big board in front. And all of a sudden, she would just walk in with, like, just some panties on and stand in front of the board and just stand there.
Okay.
So that's the light version of it. She might have a top or whatever on, but just standing there, like, you know, whatever. And for all of us in there to pretty much view, it was that type of thing.
Okay.
But you know, for some people, they need candles and stuff like that to set a mood. So this is just common practice. It's standard. Come on, you know that.
It became normal. That's kind of normal.
Okay.
For the lifestyle, you know, that I was
See the
in.
look on his face.
It was normal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was not any sort of crazy revelation or anything else like that. It's just describing a time. Did you see, you know, the guy that was speaking?
Yeah,
you
that
know, in
was
the studio?
Dre. But I mean, what he's talking about, I know what he's talking about. It's pretty much Rob would tell me beforehand to put on something specific and then walk in the room. So yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. So it wasn't like
Okay.
I was just like, ooh, I'm about to go walk in the room. No. It wasn't like that, you know.
Okay,
But
so,
I mean, he
so
left out the part though where Rob wouldn't let them speak to me, or I couldn't speak to them, or couldn't nobody even look at me and things like. He left that out. Like he may have looked, glanced, but then he would turn his head straight the other way. So he left all that out.
well, no, they talked about that. They said that when R. Kelly's women, like including his wife, would come around, they would not be allowed to talk to her, look at her, whatever, and that kind of applied to any woman associated with R. Kelly.
Right.
Okay, so that story was more or less accurate.
Right. I mean, but he didn't really even
Yeah.
say anything, honestly, other
Yeah.
than, I came in there for Rob in my underwear with a shirt on. And then he tried to justify me being underage when I met Rob by saying he wasn't there, but he came later. So, and to be fair to me, honestly, when he did come around, he still doesn't know I still was 17 when I was in Chicago until, I turned 18. So yeah, you weren't at the Home Alone video, but when I was in Chicago, I was still 17.
Got it. So now you have a daughter that's in high school, right?
Yes.
She was actually on Red Table Talk
Yes, she
with
was.
with Jada. As a family, having you being in the documentary and your daughter being in high school and being on social media, I'm sure, and so forth. How has this really kind of affected your home life?
It's affected it, but at the same time, we were kind of prepared for this. Like I've kind of gradually, I dealt with a little bit back in 2008, so it's not totally new to me. So I talked to my children, so this none of this was like a surprise. So she may have kids at school ask her, "Oh, I saw your mom on TV," or "Do you think that's okay, this or that," or things like that, every now and then. But she's a really smart girl, and she knows how to handle herself, and she knows all about everything. I'm very open and honest with her, just like I am with you and everyone else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was crying
Yeah.
on Red Table Talk, so
Right.
obviously it does affect her.
Well, yeah,
You know.
she was crying because she knows what I've dealt with, and she's feeling, for me, she's like, people, you never know what others have gone through,
I think I was talking to Linnell about this, and she made an interesting point that she feels that R. Kelly ultimately got off on that first trial because the girl in the video was black. And ultimately, all of the women that R. Kelly was dealing with were, young black girls. Had you taken that same situation and put in a young blonde girl, they came from a middle class home, there's actually something called white girl syndrome, in the media that shows a disproportionate amount of media attention goes to young white women of a certain, financial level than goes to other women. Do you feel that being a black woman and having everyone else in the situation be black women also is the reason why it went on for so long under the radar?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I agree with that.
Okay. And music has had a history of this type of thing. Jerry Lee Lewis was married to his cousin at she was 13 or something of that sort. Elvis Presley was married to Lisa Marie Presley was very young at the time. You've seen it over and over again. Do you feel that if R. Kelly goes to prison, that it'll send a message that this type of thing won't be tolerated anymore?
Hopefully, that's the goal. You know what I mean? The goal is for, everyone to be held accountable for their actions. It's also to get a message out there to people in power, not just musicians, just anyone that thinks that they can pay off people and get big lawyers and get away with things. Yeah, it shouldn't be tolerated, and it won't be.
You and R. Kelly haven't spoken for many years. if you were to walk into the room right now and, have a conversation with you, what would be the thing that you would tell him?
Probably to send those girls home. I'd probably tell them to send them home, and if they want to come back, let them come back on their own. That's probably all that I'd be willing to discuss at this point, because I just don't understand why he won't just let them go home if they'll come back on their own.
Well, you were in a similar situation. You're talking about the two girls. Was it Jocelyn Savage
In Azriel, yeah.
and Azriel, right? You were in somewhat of a similar situation. Did you ever feel like you were trapped and couldn't leave and couldn't go home?
I didn't feel like I was trapped, but he did make it kind of difficult to just up and go. Like he'll make you miss flights. He'll do things like not get on the phone. If it's a situation where you want to do something that you feel like he doesn't agree with, or it got to the point at one time that I had to start making up emergencies for reasons why I needed to go visit someone, or I'd always have to have a really good reason why I needed to do certain things. So yeah, I can understand why it is difficult for them to get away. And if they probably don't want to upset him. And, I'm sure they do care for him. So, they do probably want to be there at this point. So I would say, they're going to have to get tired. And, everyone does that on their own time. But other than that, I would say even if they don't want to leave him, if he could just let them go home for a weekend or so, see their families, because that's all their families want, is to see their children. And if they say, you know what, Mom, I'm going back, because they're grown, they can do that. I don't see
Well,
how I don't see that as being far-fetched.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned the families. A lot of people have looked at this situation and said, okay, everybody knows about R. Kelly's history. Everybody knows about the trial. Everyone knows about the Aaliyah story and so forth.
Mm.
How much responsibility would you put on the families of even bringing their young daughters in the vicinity of someone of an R. Kelly with this type of established, reputation?
Well, me personally, I wouldn't send my daughter. But from what
That's what I'm saying.
from what I've heard, because I've spoken to the Savages, and they're really good friends of mine. They really didn't follow the trial much, and what they did know, it wasn't really clear, especially since the girl was saying it wasn't her. So even though we're good friends now, I guess at that time they probably didn't really believe my story back then. But I think the fathers thought that they had more control than they did. And that's ultimately what happened. They thought that they could control the situation and always be there. And it just so happens that they weren't able to do that, because he already had in his mind of how he could get around that, because he's been doing it for so long.
Right. Well, I mean, this trial is going to come up sooner or later, unless
Yes.
he pleads out.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine a plea deal, because there is no slap on the wrist plea deal with this many charges.
Right.
So
And I mean, this isn't the first go round either. You know what I mean?
right.
Mhm.
So my guess is he's going to take it to trial,
Yes.
and we're going to ultimately see what happens, and he'll have his day in court, as will everybody else. And we'll see what happens. I think that with these many, and I've interviewed a lot of people around this and so forth, with these many stories and these many videotapes, and and when you cross-check the facts and the stories and everything, it all pretty much lines up. I can't imagine him walking away from this.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't see this going very well for him. But I mean, it's about time that he's held accountable for his actions. I mean, I get bombarded with emails and DMs and all these things. My entertainment manager, it's Pelican Gang Entertainment. They get so many emails all about all this stuff, and girls talking about things that have to do with him, girls saying things that didn't have to do with him. Situations where they've gone through abuse. I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's just, yeah, you wouldn't understand. I mean, it's so much. It's a lot.
Well, Well, but even as he's leaving, after he posts bond and he leaves and goes to McDonald's,
Yeah.
girls are still bombarding him and want to take
Yep.
selfies and so forth.
Yes, you're right.
His Black female audience is something on an absolutely other level. It was like that during the first trial,
Right.
and seems like it's still going strong.
But the sick part about that is you said he was at McDonald's taking pictures with Black girls, right? Wasn't he told one of the stipulations not to be around anyone under 18? And he went straight to McDonald's. I'm sure it was someone under 18 there. I'm sure.
Right.
So, I mean, he could care less about, he does pretty much what he wants to do. And, I mean, they allow him to get away with it. But hopefully at trial, it'll be a little different.
Yeah. I mean, R. Kelly's kind of very, very different in the way that, he just pretty much puts everything out there. It's like, what was that song? I Confess?
I confess. What I admit, the last one, I admit.
I admit, yeah. I admit.
On that song, he actually, I think he cussed me out a little bit on there. He said something about, I think he said, bitch, I bought you a car or something like that. Because he brought me a car at one time. So, yeah, he got a little rude. Yeah. So,
Okay. Did that bother you at all when you heard that?
Not really. I mean, he did buy one, so no, didn't bother me.
Okay.
But
what kind of car did you get?
It was just a Ford Mustang, but it was a new one at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of fly.
Right.
Kind of fly for a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Listen, Lisa Van Allen, I definitely appreciate you coming in and telling the story. And you've told your story before on different platforms, but I think this is going to be special in the sense that you get the whole story from beginning to end.
Yes.
Without it having, interspliced with other people's stories and so forth.
Right.
This is actually the Lisa Van Allen story, which I think is a very important story when it comes to R. Kelly, who, regardless of the accusations, is going to go down as a very important musician of this era.
Yeah, you can't take that from him. I mean, he's retarded and he likes underage girls and he's a pedophile, but he is talented. But a lot of those talented guys are kind of weird.
Yep.
So. But he still needs to go to jail.
Yeah, and that's probably going to happen.
Right.
And ultimately, I played you a clip of the public announcement interview.
Right.
But I'm not sure. I don't think we've put this part out yet. But when I asked them if the docuseries was accurate and based on their, what they've seen and experienced, is it, believable? And they said ultimately yes. From your point of view, as group mates with R. Kelly, spending a lot of personal time with him, everything that you've personally seen, do you feel that Surviving R. Kelly was accurate or very one-sided?
I would say that it was pretty accurate. Pretty accurate. And I'm gonna say that in terms of most of the women that spoke, those survivors, they, I believe they were telling the truth.
The power of the documentary. It could really change the direction of things.
Yeah, it was powerful.
Yeah, that was very well done. Shout out to Dream Hampton. I think she did a good job.
Yeah, she did.
So Lisa Van Allen, thank you so much for coming in. We'll have links to your book, in the description. So, everyone should go and buy it. Do you have an audiobook version or no?
Yeah, it's the digital and the paperback.
Okay. You should do an audiobook version. That's actually how I read all my books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look into that then so we can get you a copy. Do you want a paperback copy too?
Sure. Send it over.
Okay.
Send it over.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and good luck with everything, and my respects to, your family, your daughter and so forth. And, it seems like you've gone through somewhat of a healing process by actually getting the story out, as well as helping a lot of people that have probably gone through something similar.
Yes, I do. I try to help out. And, I always take pride in just being very honest,
Yep, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
All right. Thank
Peace.
you. Thank you for having me.
Peace.